Okay.
Hey,
Yeah, I think now we are,
hi everybody.
maybe with a little bit of a delay, but it does say it's live, right?
Yeah, it does on mine.
We are. Cool. Yeah. Okay. We are live. I think I'm going to get rid of that thing. How do I do that?
The StreamYard little thing.
Yeah, that little notification. That was me testing the comments. Okay, so if you can hear us on YouTube, if anyone's there, if you can hear us while we troubleshoot this.
Is there a delay on your end, like for me, Sarah?
No, it's great.
Okay.
No, it's pretty good timing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like there's the folks that are there. Can you give us a quick test? It looks like there's a couple of people watching live now. Will you type something in the
emoji?
Yeah, anything.
Give us a sign you're out there.
Talking into the void. I think we're good though. I'll log on to YouTube and make sure I can see it too. I think we're good though. I'll log on to YouTube. See there. Okay. I can hear it a little delayed. And there's Julie. Yay. Okay. Thank you, Julie, for that. I'll pop it up there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And now I can hide it. Okay, so here we are. I think we got that sorted out. And Brooke, thanks for joining me for this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. We have a bunch of stuff we want to cover, but first off, let's make sure people who are watching us live or watching the replay know who we are. So I'm Sarah Histan. If you I think most people who are here are going to know who I am, but I am a personal trainer and a mental health therapist. And my business is SMH training, and I help people get strong and ready for their outdoors adventures. And this is kind of the tail end of our Ski Babes training season, where we're trying to help people really figure out how to apply their strength in ski season. So Brooke is here to help us take some of the strength we've been building and put it into play on our skis. Brooke is a ski guide and an avalanche instructor. And will you tell us a little bit more, Brooke, about some of your background?
Yeah, I have been a ski instructor at Alyeska Resort for probably 18 years now, and started off in the ski instructor world as a tele instructor, and I still teach tele, still love it, but also teach alpine, and really had to kind of unravel. I'd grown up skiing my whole life at Crystal Mountain down in Washington, but becoming a ski instructor up in Alaska, I had to start over from scratch. I kind of had to unravel all my bad habits and start over as an adult. And part of that realization was my first winter job ever was working for Valdez Heli Ski Guides as their office manager, and getting ridiculously humbled by the mountains in Valdez, and came in there as a Washington girl thinking I was like a hot skier, and then I was like, oh god, I don't know anything. Like, these are huge mountains. And Kirsten Kramer took me under her wing, and she was like, don't let those boys tell you can't ski, like, we'll figure it out, but definitely had to go back to the resort and kind of restart over with fundamentals. And then through that whole course, found my love of avalanche education in the Alaska Avalanche School, and have been just kind of progressing in that way, and then combining the two to become a ski guide, which is just an ever-going, evolving, lifelong process of learning, which is I'm passionate about. So it's kind of a fun interplay of the three things, where I can work it with people both on the mountain, in the resort environment, or in the backcountry. I've done some weird niches at CPG of just being like a heli coach even. And just in my time being there, kind of working behind the scenes, found that there'd be all these dudes in the heli ski world that came there, and then they'd sign their girlfriends or wives up with me to teach them on the mountain while the dudes were out heli skiing. and I'd see these women and they just rip, and I was like, why aren't you heli skiing right now? And they're like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And so I was like, yes, you are. I'm marching you down to the desk right now. And we're telling your boyfriend or husband that you can get out there. So there was a few years of me just trying to get like more women even to experience that, to know that like they could do it. I was like, it's actually easier than the resort because it's on track snow. So, you know, just been working with women on skis for 20 years probably, and guiding, you know, in the wilderness, at least in the summertime, for 25 years. So I just love all of that. Educator and guiding, to me, they go together. And just like what you do, Sarah, as far as like your interplay of like the physical health related to the mental health, I feel like for me, it always ends up being about life coaching is what it comes down to, which I love that piece.
Yeah, this is so cool. There's so many directions I want to get to in this conversation, because it seems like, yeah, you have a lot of skills that people will benefit from hearing. So I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. It is an honor. And next year I'm signing up for Ski Babes the whole season.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a few questions that people pre-submitted. We're going to work our way through those. We have a couple topics we want to hit on. And anyone who is watching live, and like if you want to give us some feedback in the moment or throw some questions at us, we're happy to answer anything that comes up and like help us go deeper into the areas that you're most interested in. So yeah, it'd be really fun for us to get some feedback from those of you who are watching. So that's your encouragement to use the comment section. Yeah. So ready to dive in, Brooke?
Yeah.
Cool. So one of the things that I want to make sure we cover, so let's start with this, get you talking about some of the skills that you see helpful for people who are trying to get into backcountry skiing, you know? So like my background, like I started as a skier doing backcountry skiing, which was a very slow and arduous way to learn how to downhill ski, because you just don't get very many laps in.
Yeah.
But I know, so there's some people on that kind of end of things. Mm-hmm. And then there are also people I know who are like, have been skiing on the resort and like feel like they've got some of the ski basics down, but then trying to translate that to backcountry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both tracks are valid, like you said, but as you admitted, what I'm seeing more and more, just because of the technology boom in backcountry gear, is that a lot of people, like in my avalanche classes, people are, you know, they get all the gear, they sign up for an avalanche class, and then we get on the skin track and they don't know how to skin or ski. And so I started backcountry skiing thinking I'm going to wean myself off the resorts and never go there again. And then I realized that wasn't the reality, is like that they actually can go together really well. And so I always encourage people that like you're going to get so much bang for your buck if you just like take a lesson at a resort. Spend a little bit of time, because as you know, I mean, you're super strong, but you can probably attest to how long that process was to learn in the backcountry. Super hard to learn in all the varying conditions that are deep, and you have to like have a great instructor, that you're not just building bad habits. Because I think that the primary bad habits I see in the backcountry are people in the back seat. So mentally, Sarah and I were talking earlier about there's all these things that go on in the backcountry that don't go on the resort. So you're skinning up and you're taking in the mountain environment, and you're looking for danger signs all the time. You're listening to the snowpack. You notice all the other people out there. There's maybe people passing you on the skin track. You feel this like anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety that comes with like even determining if you're making safe decisions or not. And so then that's a lot to fill up your brain with. And then to expect yourself to like then turn around and rip skins and ski like a rock star is a big ask. That's a huge ask of yourself. So some things that I try to do is like, just like we would do progressions in a teaching progression on the resort, I try to get people to really like dial down their expectations in the backcountry too. And hashtag make meadow skipping cool again. Like, you know, go to those like smaller low angle slopes, the meadows, and like go away from the big crowds and like go with a partner who you really, really trust and can share everything with. And then pick off these like smaller chunks of the puzzle where if you're not worried about avalanche terrain, you're not scared of other people passing you or seeing you ski or all the like anxiety that comes up here. And often the snow can be better down there because it's not wind affected or icy. And then just like choose a little zone to milk where you can like transition at the top, get your skis in ski mode, and then take your time, take a big breath, and remind yourself that like of just some of the fundamentals. So like just standing in athletic stance, getting your hands forward. I call poles commitment sticks. So if you use your pole plants, they're like the metronome of skiing, and nothing helps you more in the backcountry than having a metronome that's committing you to the turn. And what happens when we get mentally scared is our hands go back, then our body goes back, and we forget those like basic fundamentals, and then it makes it really, really hard to make our next turn, you know, and then your legs are smoking because you're in the back seat. And so the commitment sticks, they like that pole plant gets you forward, gets you moving into your next turn. If it's powder, it helps you with the like powder bounce to like get that like you're riding porpoises under the snow and getting that little like doing, doing, doing happy bounce going. So when I start my run, even if it's on a big steep thing, what I'll try to do first is like traverse into it and just bounce in my boots and feel that my heels lock down again. If I'm not telling, feel my boots being locked in. And then I'm taking in information from the snow. I'm like, okay, it's this deep, it's this bouncy, or there's that much like wind effect. So I literally like bounce across maybe 5 turns and then like, or 5 bounces. And then on the 6th bounce, maybe I'll use that to start my turn. And in that way, I've already like read the snow condition through my feet, and I'm feeling a little more like comfortable in my own shoes. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. So it sounds like you have kind of a like a pre-run little sequence that you go through almost each time.
Yeah.
That helps you try to get the sense for a bunch of what you're going to be experiencing. And then do you kind of push that aside then? Then you're like, okay, we've got this, and you're trying to not think so much about that so you can focus on skiing?
I think the problem I see is like people get paralysis by analysis, and either they beat themselves up or they just are thinking way too hard about all these things. Like, I should be in the front seat, I should plant my pole here, or I should transition my weight. And it's like, skiing is like dancing. You know, it's like if you were learning a new dance and you just were like thinking only through the steps, you would get really frustrated. You'd forget to listen to the music. And it's like super important to recognize that like there's so many styles out there that work. Like, are you having fun? Like, you know, is it a beautiful day in the mountains? Are you like enjoying the time with your friends? Like, that's what it's about. And you need to like, that's where you're going to find flow state, is like actually like relaxing and being there and letting the flow of the mountains guide you in that way. And that's what the listening to the music is, you know, just like everybody dances differently on the dance floor and there's no one right way to do it. Skiing to me is the same thing.
I love that. That's so cool. Good analogy.
Yeah.
What about when conditions aren't that great? Like, can you talk about variable snow and whiteout and things like that?
Yeah. I've gotten pretty picky choosy in my old age of like, I definitely like, as I'm going up, I'm like probing at the snow a lot. And if it's a snow changes like today, I knew that the snow was going to get worse the higher up I went. And so I was like probing along, being like, where does that wind effect start? Like, where do I want to turn around and start my run? And I started it kind of in the middle of a mountain today on the, like, stopped on a skin track halfway up because I was like, above this, it's going to be a lot more wind hardened. So I've let go of my attachment to the summit for part of it to keep myself in that happy state. And then the dealing with, I mean, some days we just get out and there's going to be 5 different, we live in Alaska, there's going to be 5 different kinds of snow on the way down on one run, you know? So it's like the biggest thing that I do is I try to pretend like it's a groomer, because sometimes, again, when it's cruddy or wind packed, everybody sits back mentally and physically and that
Mm-hmm.
actually makes it harder. So I'll like try to charge forward and break through that and just ski it as like I imagine myself on a groomer, and then I'm like making those turns with the same aggressiveness that I would, and that helps you like bust through the crud. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
sit back and away from it, then you're doing all the like wheelie magig, and it's like it gets the best of you. Granted, there's some types of snow that you're just like, well, I'm gonna go, like the zipper crust is like I had a run with Heather Tham earlier this year where we knew we were just going out to do beacon practice, but we got all the way up and then we're like, oh God, we have to ski down through this. And it literally was the type where it was like such thick zipper crust where like you had to traverse like and then do a kick turn and traverse all the way back. And there are days like that, and it's okay to, again, to me, it's all about being gentle with yourself. It's like, we're not always going to ski like a rock star, and there's some ass-kicking types of snow out there. But the best thing you can do is like get out of your own head, trust your ski equipment, and try to stay forward. And even if that, for me, sometimes it's like going like, okay, I'm gonna try to do 2 turns, like in the front seat, feeling my shins on the front of my boots. And if I get 2, then it's a micro victory, and I'll be like, yes, And then if I start getting like out of control or it doesn't feel good, then I'll like pull off and I'll like reset and I go for 3 turns or something. So I think celebrating micro victories, taking bite-sized chunks, and just set yourself up for success. Don't ski with partners that you're going to be stressed out that you're trying to keep up with them. Is like ski with partners that are on your same ability level, or at least you can communicate with, and they're very patient and they don't mind waiting for you or whatever it is. So you don't have to have that added stress. Nobody needs that added stress. That's what like,
yeah, those are really good. There's 2 things there you brought up. One is trust. I like want to like dive into that a tiny bit, and then this point about being with partners. So let's put a pin in the partner one, and talk a little bit about trust, because for me personally, developing the ability, like I still feel like skiing is an exercise in trust for me. Like in like still learning to trust my equipment as someone who's newer to downhill and speed, and then I feel like self-trust is a big part of it. Just like really feeling not unsure at times if I can trust my body to make that turn happen.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of 2 parts. So like the trusting the gear really is amazing nowadays. And like I was just skiing with my boyfriend who grew up in Switzerland, and he grew up on like the skinny old style skis, and he looks like he could turn down the Eiger, but he like doesn't trust the new gear. So I see him sitting back and I'm like, the new gear has like early rise tips. He's like, I still mentally feel like I'm going to dive under if I charge forward. Yeah. And I'm like, your new skis, I was like, that's your old, like that's the way you were brought up. But it's like the new skis, if you charge forward, it's almost like a water ski. It gets you up on step. Like the way the design of the ski is like the more you press on the front of the ski, the more it surfs like a water ski does. So I kind of visualize that trust of like, I need to get up on step and then the turns will be easier. So you pressure the front of the ski. And then trusting that you have a DIN set binding that will release if you mess it up and you pop out. It's like we're all scared of getting hurt, but it's like your skis, if they're set correctly to you, should release when they need to, and then but the trust in yourself is like the bigger piece of the puzzle, right? And this ties into like a greater conversation that we're going to get to further in depth here within this hour, is the imposter syndrome, is like our self-belief that we're good enough, that we have the skills, that we know how to ski, that we are capable of being at that place in the mountain that we're at, that not only can we get down safely, but we can get down in style or with flow or have fun. And that's where I think the concept of micro victories has really helped me. Like in mountain biking, for instance, like I feel like I'm still just a baby novice mountain biker, and if I can get over a rock that's this big, I'm just like, yes, a micro victory, and I celebrate every one of those, because to me, it's you're creating like you're creating these pathways in our brain that somebody explained to me is like, if you have, they're like little guys who pass basketballs back and forth to each other. So if the guys passing the basketball are saying negative thoughts, if that's your pattern, that like, I suck, I'm not good enough, I'm not a good skier, and they pass that basketball all the time. And the people who think that you're a good skier, they're passing the basketball from way across the court. Then what you have to do is train those guys to be closer on the basketball court. So we're training our neural pathways by saying positive things in our mind. And by doing that over and over again, it actually does work. It's like we create a neural pathway that believes in ourselves, that says like, I am a good skier, like I am good enough, I do have the skills. And so that means every time that light bulb goes off, or you nail a good turn or nail a run, that you totally celebrate it. And you don't think of it as a fluke, that you're like, oh, I fully scored on that. Like, that was me. I totally did that. I rocked that. I crushed that. And so when you do that, the guys with the basketball, with the positive basketball, they get closer than the negative ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I just heard this great, I think it was a TED talk that explained this, like, neural pathways and how we do that self-trust, that self-belief. Mm-hmm. And so they're like the old Saturday Night Live skits of like looking in the mirror and be like, I am okay. Like, I love myself. It's like, that stems from a real deal thing of like, that's actually true. Like, we do need to say those things. We do need to believe in ourselves that way, as it makes sense neurologically that we have to create positive trust in our own selves. So
that's super cool. Yeah. I was just, what that makes me think of is just this weekend I was skiing with some friends who have a 5-year-old who they're teaching to ski. Mm-hmm. And as she was skiing downhill, she was out loud saying, if you can do it, I can do it, to herself, like out loud. It was so cool. And awesome. I love thinking about how like the way we kind of cheer ourselves on, for one, it starts like super young, but a lot of us have been doing it negatively since we were really young. Yeah. And like how amazing it would be if you like started when you were 5, like cheering yourself on like that. But
really,
like she was totally like just like showing up for herself the whole way and celebrating every little victory. So I really love that.
I love that you brought it back to childhood, because I do think it's like we all have these like old narratives that don't serve us anymore, right? And it's, if you actually look back at like, where does that come from? It's like sometimes it's like something our parents said, or something maybe an old boyfriend said that like instilled in us like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I have to prove myself, or I'm bad at this. And it's like, we own the choice to rewrite those narratives. Like, if you can identify who that was or what that story was, and go back and rewrite it and find that little girl again skiing down the slopes who's like, if you can do it, so can I. If you can do it, so can I. And that's where, like, I think that's why, like, my whole adult life I've worked with groups of women. Like, I just got back from Japan a day ago with like a whole crew of women. It was like 5 women in this group and 6 of us together. And everyone was, around similar abilities, but like the cheerleading that happened amongst the crew was like so heartwarming to watch that like affirmation build and that narrative build of like kind of the, if you can do it, so can I. If you can do it, if you're not scared, if there'd be one girl that like dove in there and went first and she ripped it, then everyone else would be like, okay, we can do this too, and then there was like so much cheering and camaraderie that went with that I was like, I feel like it was a macro victory over the week, because that installation of self-belief and trust, I just watched all of them just grow like exponentially in that way of like, they're all stronger emotionally now and stronger on their skis because they trust themselves to be strong, which was just like so powerful for me to be a part of. It was very cool.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. And now we're like into talking about imposter syndrome. So I think we should just go there, like, yeah. I know it's something you talked a little bit with me about running into in the guide world, which kind of blew my mind, because I feel like I've been looking up to you as a super badass skier. And then all of a sudden it was it's one of those things where you realize like this stuff is like, no matter where you're at, it's probably like, you can always find people who are doing it better if that's what you're looking for. So
yeah. And I've been looking up to you as a super badass adventure fitness amazing athlete, you know, so it's like I think that it's always important to like see ourselves and others too, is like I think it has been a lifelong journey for me, and one of the neat things for me about living in Alaska was all the professional skier girls came up here to film, you know, to know them, and you'd be like, oh, Angel Collinson has fears too, or Lindsay Dyer has fears too, and they're insecure and they're scared, and you're like, oh, they're real people, you know, everybody's real people, you know. It just was like, it put them off the pedestal and be like, okay, instead of like, I'm scared to ski with this person, be like, doesn't matter, like this is everybody's struggling, everyone's struggle is real, and we all have it to a different degree. And I think I shared with you, like, I cringe when people come up to me and say, like, you're such a badass, because then I'm like, oh God, I don't ever want to ski with them because they're going to see that I'm not a badass at all. Like, they'll know that I don't really ski anything cool or gnarly or fast, or, you know, I'm just like, oh, they're going to find out, you know?
yeah.
And I think in the guide world, it's been especially like that because it's primarily male dominated. So like I have a big like fear fitness wise that I'm not going to keep up. I have a big fear that my risk tolerance is lower than a bunch of people's, and feeling self-conscious about that instead of like, well, perhaps it comes from a real place, and it's okay to be a conservative guide, you know?
Yeah.
So some things I've been trying to do is like, one thing that Alaska is both great and awful for in the same breath is that when I first moved here, I was like, holy cow, everybody's a total badass. You'd go to like a women's party and like you'd look around the room and you'd be like, that girl like skied Denali by herself, and that girl crossed the Arctic by herself, and that girl, I mean, everybody here is a badass in just like their own sense of like where we live. But it was both too easy to play the comparison game, but then that almost like cured me of it at the same time, because I was like, there's always going to be a million people in Alaska who are more adventurous, take bigger risks, ski cooler things, do more outdoorsy adventurous things than I do. And so instead of like wasting energy comparing myself to them, I tried to focus on like, okay, well, what do I bring to the table? Like, what do I believe I'm good at? And for me in the guiding world, that's what I bring to the table, is that I make people feel comfortable and at ease, and I make a joyful day. And that's my guide spirit. Like, it's not that I take people to the hardest, coolest terrain, or that I have the gnarliest technical rope skills. It's like, no, I'm just a great, like, I love being with people, and I love seeing their light bulb go off when they're in a magical place, and I love wilderness. And that's my magic. That is my strength in the guide world. And I've had to just really like identify that for myself and embrace it, and then own it, like that's valid and an important niche to play, even if it doesn't match like the male dominated world of guiding, even if it doesn't match like some of the more adventurous women in Alaska. It's like, it doesn't matter. It matches my style of guiding. And and I hope always to like, always be able to just bring people into the wilderness and have them be able to have a magical experience and find the joy and find the flow. Like, that's my jam. Like, that's what I want. And that's why I'm a guide, is for that like, interplay. Does that make sense?
It's great. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah. So what do you do with people who you're working with who are experiencing imposter syndrome themselves as skiers?
I think that I love that we're talking about it now. I think the conversation now at this point, like, it's a household phrase, which I love. So that I feel like just getting it out on the table is a great start, right? Because you can, once you admit it out loud, then you can like, you release some of the hold it has on you, and then you can start talking it through. And then you essentially, by doing that, you've asked for that circle of support too. So like, that's what I'm trying to create as a guide, is be like, I don't want to be up on a pedestal. I don't want to be a badass. I want to be one of you. And I want us to, like, I suffer from this too. So let's work together on it. How can we support each other? What do we need to make that go away? You know, what are those micro victories along the progression that are going to help us celebrate where we're at and not be so frustrated with where we're at. And if we celebrate where we're at, then we're going to eventually like get up the learning curve and get to the next place and get over those brick walls that are stopping us. And so to me, it's a conversation that I just want to keep like encouraging women to have, because I think what we'll find is that it breaks down those walls of putting each other on these like social media pedestals of like, oh my God, Sarah is such an incredible athlete. And like, there's no way I could do a hike with her because she'll kick my ass and I'll never keep up with her. So I'm never going to ask her to go. You know, if we do that to each other, then we limit our opportunities for growth. Whereas if I just say to you, Sarah, I'd love to go for a backpack with you this summer, but like, I'm nervous that I don't have the fitness or, you know, the experience to keep up with you in the mountains. Can we just like sit down and talk it through and make a plan that will work? And if you know that fear in me, then you're going to consciously support me along that. And you're not going to sprint ahead of me and try to prove to me that you're like so much fitter than I am. Like, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to set a pace that Brooke can follow so that we can be a team and we can celebrate that, like being in the mountains together. Does that make sense? Like,
I like that. Yeah.
It knocks each other off our pedestals and makes us real people again. And I think that's, the more we do that, the stronger the sisterhood's going to be, and the like better athletes will become, because we'll acknowledge and love the pieces in ourselves that are imperfect and blue square athletes. I'm like, who needs to always be a double black diamond athlete? Like, I'm stoked to be a blue square mountain biker and a green surfer, and like, I'm like, yeah, like, you know.
Yeah, well, one of the things you said there that I want to highlight is that like celebrating where you're at and accepting where you're at, and like taking away that idea that somehow you should be somewhere else to be legitimate or part of the group or like any of those things. So
yeah, and I think that's where
again, because that's such a good point.
Yeah, social media tricks us, and I mean, I had this epiphany maybe 2 years ago, and I was like on a surf wave that was like knee high to a grasshopper, you know, but I was like in the flow state. I was like, yeah, I'm surfing. I love it. It's like, no wonder people get this. But you know, it's like, it was the first time that I wasn't like, yeah, but you're not cool because you're not, you know, like actually surfing. And I was like, I'm totally surfing. It doesn't matter how hardcore it is. And that's why, like, in my avalanche classes, that's why I've been like hashtag make meadow skipping cool again. Because I have as much joy in like powder bouncing along a 20-degree slope as I do like skiing a bigger line that I've been trying to ski for a long time, you know? And so it's also expanding our definition of joy.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that if we can expand our definition of joy instead of limiting it to like, I must be this thing like other people on social media, like skiing a steep spine line or crushing a big wave or bagging a peak or all this like masculine male energy idea of like conquer. It's like, if we dial that back and take the pedestal out of it and just approach like flow state for flow state and expand the definition of joy, is like, sometimes joy looks like what I did today, which was just like go for a nice walk in the mountains, have a little picnic and meadow skip my way down in the sunshine, you know, with my boyfriend. I was like, that was that was like days I've had in a long time. And it was like noon to 3, you know, it wasn't hardcore. It wasn't crazy. It was just beautiful. And so it's like that expansion of joy and definition of joy will keep us safer, happier, like less comparison game, all of those things, I think.
Yeah.
Where you're at.
So good. Yeah. And so you started talking a little bit there about social media, which goes right into one of the questions that we got, which was like kind of a broad question on all things social media, but like, how do you manage it when you're trying to be maybe in flow state, but also maybe trying to document one part of it. And then also this question about like, how do we present like the cool things we're doing and also the super like mellow normal things and make it what we're trying to do as inclusive as possible.
Yeah. I think in our brief conversation, Sarah, that you and I had earlier was just that it is a goal of both of ours to be as authentic and genuine and real in that space as possible. And so I really do my best to try to balance like creating fun images, but like also sharing the real struggle and sharing the reality of what's going on. And you know, and a piece of what you and I spoke about too is like there's a like a reality that drives it in a sense of like in order to maintain a guide lifestyle and work like for barely any pay for 25 years is like I have been lucky enough to become an ambassador for a few companies, and that gives me the gear that allows me to make no money and do the job that I do. But in order to get those gear and be an ambassador, then you have to provide some images. And I'm lucky enough to have just a few friends who love photography as a passion anyway. So then that can be just like fun to create together, and I make it more like a fun creative thing instead of a chore. I'm like, oh, I've learned through them like how you can like set up the beauty of a shot with like the sun and the glistening of the snow, and now I do that for clients. Like the whole time in Japan, I just like would post up and take pictures of my girls so that they could get that cool powder shot of them skiing, you know. And a lot of it's just like holding down the button and, you know, and you have 68 shots of crappy ski form, and you got one where the snow just happens to be over the pole, and you're like, that's it, you know. But then like, I mean, of course that's fun. Like I try to embrace like the creative art side of that and not look at it like this chore, like I'm trying to be somebody I'm not. I'm like, what do I see that's beautiful out here? It's like the sparkle, pow, the magic in the trees, like framing a skier through like the Japan trees were just like so gorgeous in themselves that I just always like hid between the trees to take pictures of skiers through the landscape just to capture the beauty of it. So I take a lot of joy just in trying to create the art behind it, and then try to let go of like I let go of caring like how many likes I get or who's watching or whatever, you know. It's like you know, I think that we're all human and that we all have egos, and that you all like will flip back on your post and be like, did anybody notice? You know? Like we're all only human that way, but I try not to attach a sense of self-worth to it. It's another tool, and I try to make it as an authentic representation without like, I know sometimes if I've just gotten like too off the deep end with just creating like glamour shots of skiing, that if people are approaching me like, your life is so glamorous, and you're like, no, it's not, like my dad just passed, you know, like so trying to get that reality in there too of like, I'm a real human with real struggles as well, you know.
Yeah, I really like that approach. That like for when the creativity part, that's been something that's been on my mind a lot with social media recently too. How it can be this really like fun, creative thing that we're like putting out into the world.
Yeah.
And then also I do really like for me too that really trying to be showing sort of the whole range of the experience of a human being. It's not just the super beautiful moments, which are sometimes the easiest ones to highlight, but sometimes the real beauty is in like what it took to get there too. So there's this really cool potential for social media when it's done in like that sort of whole person way to kind of normalize some of the things that we like think we should feel ashamed about, or like think that it's only happening to us. Like I feel like the more we talk about these things like imposter syndrome and all this other stuff that can happen in your head that makes you feel like you're the only one that's struggling, maybe we can start to normalize it and come together more
I
then.
think so. And
Yeah.
like you said, like I think that you present an image that's very approachable, and that's part of that genuine authenticity. And that would be my goal too, is that that would be the take home, is like, I want to be approachable to the people who don't know me. I want them. And I have had some cool stories that way. I was like, I went to a rally with my dad that was a political rally, but it was about like women's voices being heard. And we held up a sign that was like, we believe all victims, or something like that. And this woman found me who didn't know me, but saw that post of mine, and she asked me on Instagram if she could call me. And we ended up having like a 2-hour talk where she shared this, like, I mean, pretty intimate, like horrific story of like sexual abuse. But the fact that she found that she could like, oh, this woman will believe me, and I need to be heard by somebody, even if it's a stranger. Like, I just like sat down and cried with her for 2 hours. And it was so important to me that like that came from social media. Like, she just saw this one post of mine saying like, we support, we believe you, we believe your story. And she had somebody that she could call that she felt safe talking to. She didn't even know at all. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what the potential for social media has. It does have the power of connectivity in a positive way if we own that ability to make it that for us. To make a powerful like sisterhood connection, and not pit ourselves against each other more, and not compete more or compare more, but to collaborate more and share more and have the conversation more. That would be my goal with that, for sure.
Totally. Cool. Well, I think that actually is going to fold really well into this conversation about partners that like we pinned from earlier, about finding the people who best support you working toward like having the kind of days you want to have outside. And there was a question too that maybe we'll try to fold into this about a question from someone who lives in a do you remember this one, Brooke?
Oh yeah, remote Southeast Alaska.
Yeah,
finding partners who matched, and yeah,
trying to find the right partners. Doesn't want to. Sounds like someone who's fairly comfortable in the backcountry and doesn't want to do too much with new partners, and so is looking for the people who are at her level.
Yeah, I think the finding of the partners can be really difficult, and I get that question a lot in avalanche classes, especially people new to the backcountry. And too often you see women who are introduced to the backcountry by their boyfriend, and their boyfriend's just dragging them along, and then they're like, well, I want to have a voice. Like, I see a lot of women in my avalanche classes who are like, well, I've just been following these dudes around the backcountry, and I don't know what's going on. I'm just putting my life in their hands. And I was like, oh God, yeah, we need you to have a voice, And so a piece of that is empowering yourself with the knowledge to be able to have a voice, and then empowering yourself with the trust in your voice to be able to speak up. And then, I always say in my backcountry classes, like, you need to be more snobby about who you go in the backcountry with than who you date or marry. Like, it needs to be like it has to be like the best, like easiest person to communicate with. Like, you have to be willing to like somebody who can be your full real deal everything with, and say like, I'm scared right now. I have a pit in my stomach. Something, I can't explain to you what's going on with me, but like something doesn't feel right. I have like the hair on the back of my neck standing up, and for the other person to be like, sweet, okay, we'll just ski down the skin track. Like, you have to be able to have that style of communication, and that trust in each other, and that honoring and respect, and not like have one person pushing the other into an objective, or not listening, or forcing them like outside their ability or comfort level. So one, it's small groups. And sometimes like your closest friends aren't the people you end up, like, you would think they'd be good in the backcountry, but like I have friends that I'm like, I won't go in the backcountry with them, but I'll ski at the resort with them, or dinner party friends, but like we don't have the same risk tolerance. And so it makes for bad communication. So it's finding like that ability level, risk tolerance level, and then communication level where you can be your most real self. because in the like 90% of accidents that have happened in the backcountry, when they review and replay from the witness standpoint, people who are there, they more often than not say like, I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't say anything. Mm-hmm. And that's what we don't want to have happen, is like, we have to like be with people who you can say your everything with and be your everything with. And that's going to keep us safer in the backcountry.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that is such a skill set too. The ability to, I love what you're saying about like having people who are super comfortable just like laying it out on the table with. But I know that like a lot of us are also kind of conditioned to go with the group or not like make other people uncomfortable. And there's even like a new like fight, flight, and freeze are kind of the three known trauma responses, but there's one that's like coming around now that's being understood as fawn too, which is just like, in order to keep myself safe, I make other people okay. Like, don't make any waves.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to think about how many things we kind of have to untangle in order to like speak up in these conversations. So I guess I just wanted to like normalize that being a hard thing to do, and try to think about, like you're saying, like think about how can I make this as easy as possible, knowing that it's going to be hard no matter what for a lot of us.
Well, and I've always said that, like, I wish if I could write a book, it would be like everything I needed to learn about being a good human I learned in the backcountry. You know, it's like, because it is the same skills as like, if you could learn to, you know, set better boundaries and communicate when somebody made you feel uncomfortable. Like, I feel like I'm not good with like, you know, you have some like jackass rich heli client who like says something like sexual predatory towards me, and I'm always like, no thank you, instead of like, no, that's not okay. Like, but in the backcountry I can be like, no, I don't want to ski that, you know. So I'm like, how do I apply like who I become in the backcountry to like then that same strength and voice like, confronted with like men of power, and I don't want to be treated that way, you know. So I'm like, there could be people who are really good at shutting those like inappropriate men down like in real life, but then they won't speak up when they don't feel comfortable in the backcountry. But it's like, so if there's a place in your life that you're good at having the voice, is like use that to train the other places, you know.
That's
and
really good.
I've like almost broken up with guy friends just as guy friends, like in the backcountry, like full drag down kick out, because I was like, they're trying to convince me that like it's not going to avalanche, and I'm like, it is like wet all the way to the bottom of the snowpack. We are not skiing that. Like there's roller barrels everywhere. It's wet slab. Like it's spring. It's hot. It's like gotten hotter. I was like, there's no way over my dead body am I letting you ski that. We're not skiing it. And, you know, and I've been like almost pretty much wrestling a guy to the ground to be like, we're not going down there, and thinking that it was going to ruin our friendship. And we're like great friends still, you know? And that is not something that I'm good at in other areas of my life, you know. I want to be, you know. So it's like I get it, like that hard piece of like, you know, maybe the only reason I was felt so strong in that confident voice there is because I really, really believed in my own avalanche knowledge. Like the science was in front of me, I was like squeezing water out of the entire snowpack, and I was like, I know with all my heart it's going to avalanche, and so I am going to stop us, or any one of the three of us, from dying right now by being really strong. And whereas like I feel like I can get steamrollered in other places because I'm like, oh, the consequence isn't that bad. But I mean, if like in my life the consequence has sometimes been sexual harassment, which is pretty bad. Like that sucks, you know, just from lack of being like, that's not okay. That's totally inappropriate to talk to me that way. I want to be right now, you know. It's like, I want to be that girl, and I'm, you know, it's like,
me too.
Care too much about what people think, even if some douchebag like heli client from LA, you know. I'm like, why do I care what they think? I don't care what they, you know, like actually I don't care what they think, you know. But we can be the same in the backcountry. If you have a group of 5 or a group of 6, like all of a sudden your voice, it's that much harder. You have to have that much more courage to be the one voice of sense. So that's why it's like, start out with a group of 2 or 3, you know, like, and I kind of stick to that, you know, unless I'm guiding. And then if I'm guiding, like I just had a group of 5 women that I was guiding, but that by the mandate of me being guide, I got to have the final say, but I pretty much promoted to all of them from the get-go. I said, don't put an expert halo on me. Like, if any of you feel at any time that you have the hair on the back of your neck standing up, you have a voice too. You all have veto power. Call me on my BS. If I'm making a choice that you feel uncomfortable with, I for sure want you to raise your hand and we'll go do something else. Like, I'm not. And so, but that's way harder in a group of 6 than it is in a group of 2 or 3. So.
Cool. Thanks for all that. That's really good insight.
Yeah.
And
I know that doesn't help people who are like struggling to even find who those people are, like the woman who wrote in. Like, that's a real tough question, because it's like one of the cool questions she asked actually is like, are there crews of women around Anchorage, or are there things I can sign up for? And sometimes it is like signing yourself up on a group adventure, like the Japan trip that I just did, or like doing that. Like, I think I told you, Sarah, I have a ski mountaineering trip coming up with Kat Walsh, who runs Backpack Alaska, and that will be like combining ski mountaineering skills with backcountry skiing skills with some like glacier travel skills with like an IFMGA guide, Julia Niles. And so sometimes it's like saving up and spoiling yourself with a trip like that will be like a group of women going to do something together, and where you're going to gain skills, you're going to meet new friends. Lindsay Dyer has a bunch of things like that. She does them in Jackson Hole, she does them in Haines. And I think too often people don't sign up for that. I know with my Japan trip, like, I couldn't book the thing full, even though all these women told me they like wanted to have women's trips. And then I really believe that the limiting factor was people didn't think they were good enough, and they didn't think they would keep up. And I was like, how, like, I want to encourage more women to just like bite the bullet and sign up on those group trips, because it can be a great place, a safe place to gain skills. They can be like that cool cheerleading group. It can be a great place to practice using your voice. You can learn new skills. You can make those new friends for partners, that then will take you to that next level, And I think there's more of that going on, like, even every year, not just that's offered by me, but are offered by you, but like, there's lots of things like that going on. I'm certainly willing to like help you find whatever would fit you in whatever sport it is. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Women's groups for sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm kind of watching the time, and I want to make sure we get a few minutes to talk about dealing with fear. We had somebody ask a question about that. It's something that I run into all the time. I feel like it's a really normal, and this, I think there are some strategic things we can do about it. So I'd love to hear how you help people when they're feeling scared out there.
Yeah. So I have a great story for that. Is that years and years ago, I was got to do a personal river trip on the Hula Hula River up in the Arctic. I think you've been up there. It's a magical place, right? Yeah. And I was asked to be one of the paddle captains of the raft, but I learned how to raft by rowing a boat, and so I'd never paddle captained. So I was like super nervous, because I just thought I'd get dyslexic in the moment. And one of my girlfriends that was the other paddle captain of the other raft, like, we were scouting a rapid, and I was like just super stressed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to nail the line. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I can do this. And she was like, Cookie. She called me Cookie. And she was like, there's two kinds of stresses in the world. And there's this eustress that is positive stress. And that is that like heightened sense, that like state we rise to when you were talking about like flight or freeze. It's like, it's actually one of our like animal instinct places of like that eustress that like gives you tunnel vision of like asking all the best of yourself to like focus. And she's like, in that place, you have the butterflies in your stomach. She's like, but what you do is you make the butterflies fly in formation, and then you use that energy. And so I was like, okay, form up, butterflies, form up. We're going downstream, but I did. It worked. I felt like I just like took a big breath, was like, like, I have this. I know how to read a river. Just because I haven't done it with this tool doesn't mean that I can't do it. I formed my butterflies in formation, and I like nailed the line. And I think because of that focus and intention, I didn't take it lightly. I let the fear work for me in that positive way of like, focused intention. And that has worked for me skiing too, when like on a steep line, like no fall zone, scary moment. And I'm like breathe into it, like form up the butterflies, take one turn at a time, like stick the landing, breathe into it, link 2 turns, stick the landing, you know, just like be intentional with your movement. And then you find like everything does tunnel in. Beautiful flow state, you know?
That's super cool. I like that.
That's the dream place to end up. Like, of course, I struggle with fear all the time, like all across the board, for sure. And I mean, for me, it comes from like, and this has been started to be talked about a lot more in the outdoor world too. It's like more among like ski patrollers or firefighters or even avalanche educators who have dealt with accidents. It's like that the PTSD that we do experience trauma from, like, so I've had a lot of people die in my world since the time I was 18 on, and led like a lot of young souls like to avalanches or to mountain accidents or to rivers or just to like the roof sliding on them, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what that has crippled me with fear sometimes is that paralysis by fear that like makes me like that rising panic, because there are times when I call it like I call it imminent disaster syndrome, where I can only look at a situation and see like the whole awful thing that could happen wrong, instead of seeing like the line that you're gonna nail. And that's like that rising panic. That's where the good partners come back in. Like, is that having that really patient person who hear you and see you in that place and recognize that it's valid, the fear you're having, but also be able to like calm you back into like that it doesn't match like your perception of risk doesn't match what the actual risk is.
That's so that you brought that in, because that's a trauma healing thing too.
Is just doing the like spinning wheel sometimes.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of that too, but being in connection with people can really help us snap out of the fight, flight, or freeze response too. So I like that you brought that up. Partners, again, we circle back.
It's like in partnership and relationship too, is if you can have the conversation outside of the mountains or outside of that place of stress and talk about like what are the strategies that work for you in that place, is like I'm terrified of heights. And and like rock climbing, I get like a little bit paralyzed, and my boyfriend's an amazing rock climber, so we've had the talk outside of that situation where I get like freaked out to the point of not moving, of like how he can be a better coach for me. And I'll be like, just be patient, like allow me to breathe and don't push me. And then like provide smaller challenge, like let me maybe dial it back and take a progression in smaller bite-sized pieces. Overcome that fear. So we've made the strategy ahead of the time. And then he's able to meet me and be a better coach in that moment where I know that I have the capacity to go to that paralysis and fear, you know?
That's super cool. Yeah. And it sounds like you've put a lot of work into knowing your own patterns too ahead of time. So you kind of know what tends to work to help you out of them, and you can help other people then know what the signs are and what to do. So that sounds really smart.
And then even with self, it's like meditative breath work of just like finding breath again, like finding your feet underneath you, like just acknowledging that you're safe right now, and that you have options. Like a lot of times we put ourselves in a place where we don't think we have options when we really do. We don't have to say yes.
Good point. Yeah.
Always go back down the skin track. You know, it's like you can always take that extra day and go back the way you came, you know? Like it's like we have more choice than we convince ourselves of sometimes.
Wow, I love this. Okay, thanks, Brooke. So many good takeaways out of that. It's really awesome. but we're at our hour, so I think we should like wrap it up for now. I hope to talk with you more another time, but would you share some with folks who like maybe want to get out and ski with you, or some of the things you have going on this spring?
Yeah. So, easiest way to contact me, like, I can email brookeshinyedwards@gmail.com, and it's Brooke with an E and shiny without an E. And then, my phone number too, like I'm totally willing to just have people text me or call me. It's 907-947-3554. It's like, please reach out, send me your emails. You can find me on social media at Brooke Shiny Edwards at Instagram, and keep sharing your questions. And I am available, from here to the end of the season for lessons at the Alyeska Ski Resort, or even like private one-on-one backcountry stuff. Shred Maidens just booked me for an overnight at Manitoba, March 25th to 26th. So there's 6 to 12 spots open for that, of just kind of like more like an Avi awareness, but also backcountry skills time to be with the girls. And then the April 12th through the 18th up in the Talkeetna Mountains on the Golconda Glacier, being up there, it's kind of a hut-based trip, but ski mountaineering for a week up in the real mountains, and learning a bunch of glacier travel skills. So that you can contact Backpack Alaska. Kat Walsh is doing the bookings for that. And then been doing more with the Alaska Guide Collective too, of just like Nick D'Alessio and I have been partnering with Babkin Charters to do skiing from the boat out in Prince William Sound, which there's tons of snow at sea level this year, so we're totally available to book stuff for that. So kind of open for whatever fancy you have, and just questions and conversation, and share a cup of coffee or a beer, or a walk in the mountains.
So good. Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. It sounds like a great spring. You've got a lot of plans.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us and taking time out of your sunny day. And I hope you have an amazing spring.
Thanks. You too, Sarah. And I hope to see you over in Valdez or Anchorage.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to shut it down. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Okay.